Hi everyone, welcome back to the Helen Olivia virtual workshops. My name is Lindsay. You might not recognize me. I am a designer at Helen Olivia. And don't worry, Madison hasn't gone anywhere, but she and I are going to be alternating workshops going forward. And then Rachel will still be doing master classes as well. So I'm really excited to be with you for the first time. So bear with me as I start this with you guys. And tonight we're doing our jewel tone workshop, which I'm really excited about. This is one of my favorite color palettes to do in our shop. And it's really gorgeous, purple, pink, and reddish tones. And it's something you kind of see all seasons, but it's definitely really fun for the end of summer and fall because we have some really pretty dahlia colors that mix in with it and some other seasonal local things that we have mixed in your bucket as well. So you've got your bucket that we have delivered to you or you've picked up from us. You'll need your vase, and then you have your recipe sheet. And make sure before we start, you take the time to fill your vase with room temperature water. You don't want it to be too hot because it'll make the flowers float open a little faster, and nothing too cold because you don't want it to shock the stems. And then you are going to have your chicken wire, which I will show you how to use that in a second. And then you're going to get your other tools, which you should use either floral clippers or a floral knife. And if you don't have a floral knife, just make sure that you have a sharp, smaller kitchen knife or something that has a smooth edge, not anything serrated. And you don't want to use scissors because it might crush the bottom of the stem. And we want a really nice, sharp, diagonal cut that helps the flowers drink easily. So then you're going to take your chicken wire as our first step. And what I like to do is roll the smooth edges in towards each other, like so, and then tuck the pointed edges into the middle. And that will kind of make a nice cylinder shape for you to be able to squeeze inside your vase. So once you get that folded, you can tuck that into your vase like this, and then you're going to push it down until the top is flush against the top rim of the vase. So once that's all set, we will go ahead and move on to our first thing we're going to add. And the first thing we typically add is our mini green hydrangea. And so you have 4 of those in your bucket, and they look like this. And this we use as the base for all of our retail designs here. And as you can see, what I'm doing is I'm taking off all the leaves that are lower lying leaves. So anything that you don't want to be in your water, you want to remove. And I'm just throwing it on the ground. And from there, you're going to cut your stems at an angle about the same length as the vase. And then you're going to insert your first mini green hydrangea. Take your next one, and you're just going to kind of spread them out along the base. Same kind of length. You want it long enough so the stem is about touching the bottom, because just in case the water level drops anymore, you want to make sure all your stems stay underwater. So I'm going to take my next one. Do the same thing. And don't be afraid to kind of adjust as we go. Since this is my first workshop, I might be fumbling a little bit, but you're going to take those 3 and see how I've kind of cut the vase into thirds. The mini green hydrangea is really important to fill the bottom of the vase so there aren't any holes around the top of your vase. And it just kind of gives you the chance to create the shape for your arrangement. So I'm going to take the last one, and you can use the 4th one or not, but this is what I like to do is make this my central one, and I do it a little bit longer so it's sticking up a little bit higher than the others, and I'm going to stick that right down in the center, and I kind of like to lean it to one side. So there you go. This is the base of the arrangement. So from there, we're going to add in our greenery. So today what we have is this gorgeous purple basil, which is super fragrant, and we are loving right now. This comes from a local farm, and it smells delicious. It smells like someone's cooking pasta. So we have the purple basil, we have this gorgeous seeded eucalyptus, which honestly I've never seen it come in looking this pretty recently, and it just looks so good, and the seeds on it are so dainty. So what we're gonna do is start pulling some of our greenery and kind of spread it out around the base. And the seeded eucalyptus creates a really nice draping effect, so it can really kind of hang down. And this is kind of the opportunity for you to go wild with however you like your style to be. If you like a little tighter of a pave style, you can tuck this in a little bit tighter. I like it a little more gardeny, so I'm gonna stick it out a bit more just to give that drape. And there are a lot of pieces that have a lot of different size stems on them. This is the perfect opportunity to split your greenery to be able to use one stem in more than one way. So for things like this, you can take off these shorter pieces that are still long enough for your vase and kind of set them to the side. This is something that you can use at the end to kind of patchwork your arrangement at the end and fill in any gaps that you might see. And then use those pieces later, or you can tuck them in now and then use the top pieces for filling in right now. And I'm gonna kind of do this a little asymmetrically. So I'm gonna put some a little low and some a little higher, so it just kind of gives the arrangement a little bit more balance. So some of these are a little too small, so I'm not gonna use them for this size vase, but you can just use the gorgeous tops of it and make sure you spin it around and are looking at it from all different angles and making sure you're really getting the greenery spread out where you want it. So you kind of want to see touches of it in all different places in the arrangement. So we'll continue putting that in. And if you want to save a few extra pieces for the end, go ahead and do that. I'm going to pull a couple of these off the end, just in case I want to tuck some more in, and I'll just set those aside. So this is a perfect piece where I can split it, use that, and then use this piece in another part of the arrangement, which is great. And some of mine is a little different color, so I'm gonna kind of spread out the more grayish pieces and the more greenish pieces just to kind of get that balance throughout. So that's our eucalyptus, and then I'm gonna go in with some of this gorgeous basil. And again, some of these smaller pieces you won't be able to use, but a lot of this you could split. So for something like this, you can split it right there, and then you have one long piece, and then you have this kind of V piece you can use. And make sure when you're going along, you're removing any of these leaves, and especially with the basil, because it is so fragrant, you really don't want it to sit below your water line and then get bacteria buildup in your arrangement, because that will just make your flowers not stay fresh as long. So definitely make sure you're cleaning the stems like that, and then you can go ahead and tuck it in where you'd like. So we're kind of getting our shape down, and I'm going to put a few more of these pieces in. And this is something that when it comes in the shop, it just smells so fragrant. We can smell it from the front of the shop when we're processing it in the back, and it's something we really love to have around. It's very pretty too. So, and take all these little buds off as well. So I'm gonna put a couple more pieces, and then we'll move on to our roses. And you might think it looks a little crazy at the beginning, but trust me, once you keep adding, it just really starts to come together really nicely. So just pick and choose which stems you really want to use, and if you want to use some of the pieces with more of the buds on them. And this is a gorgeous piece that you can use this entire thing, and I kind of am just going to sit it in there at an angle. Make sure you're cutting all the stems at an angle, and go. And if anything seems to be, falling out of place, don't be afraid to kind of take it out and adjust and snip the ends fresh again and then put it back in. So I'm liking the shape of that. I'm gonna take one more piece and then I'm gonna save the rest of mine for the end. And I'm gonna put it on this side because there's a little bit of gap here with that saturated color. And for this one, I'm gonna pull off this piece with the buds and just use that. So I can really get that nice, deep purple kind of all around the base. Since this is jewel tones, we definitely want it everywhere. So I'm really liking the shape of mine. And again, if you like it tighter, definitely just adjust to how you prefer your flower arrangements. If you don't like it as drapey, then definitely just tuck it in more, but it's totally personal preference. So next we're gonna move on to our roses. And our roses we have today are the hotspot roses, which are this gorgeous bright pink. And then we have our ascot roses. And our ascot roses are this kind of deep purpley blueberry tone. And they have these kind of pointed petals, which is really, really cool and creates some visual interest in the arrangement. So what I'm gonna go ahead and do is clean all my roses and get them in a pile so they're all ready to go in at the same time. And then we can kind of create our groupings around our arrangement to place them in different areas. So to clean them off, and I'm not wearing gloves and a lot of you might not be as well, just make sure that if you don't have gloves on, you're very, very careful while you're trying to strip away any of the leaves because there might be thorns. These roses for this workshop are not necessarily the most thorny, but the ascots do kind of have some really sharp thorns. So just be mindful of that when you're stripping the leaves. So what you're gonna do is strip your leaves and then you're gonna take off any of the guard petals. So any of the petals that look a little icky or not beautiful, like you really would want to feature in your arrangement. So you just strip off any of those outside petals that have gotten damaged in the packaging or on the way to us. And also another trick is if there's a rose like this that's a little more closed and you want it to have a little more of an open look, you can just give it just blow on it a little bit and it'll kind of open up a little more. So that's something you can do to them as well. So I'm just gonna go ahead and clean all these. And make sure when you're taking some of the guard petals off, you take it all the way down to the bottom so you don't have half of the petal sticking out. These hot pink roses are just perfect for the end of summer. They're so vibrant and bright. That, and then ascots. And then for the thorns, just make sure you're being really careful with them, but there's a couple ways you can do this. You can pop them off with your thumb, so you can take the thorn and just press it with your thumb and they'll pop right off. Another thing you can do is take your knife and just go straight down on the thorns like so with your stem on the table, and that helps so you're not doing it towards yourself and you're just being really cautious with your knife. So that's a way you can clean the thorns off as well. And I've got two more. Last one. Okay, so that's all my roses that are all conditioned and ready to go in the vase. So now I'm gonna place them around my arrangement and make sure they're grouped in 3s or 2s. And when they're grouped in threes, you don't want anything to be right next to each other. It just ends up looking like eyes staring at you. So you want to kind of stagger them. So I'm going to do two hot spots and one ascot 3 times in the arrangement. So 3 like that, 3 like that, and 3 like that. And that will kind of give you the color spread out throughout your arrangement, which will be really nice. And when you are cutting your stems, make sure you're cutting them at an angle again, like we've been doing for everything else. And then you're just gonna start placing. So I've placed that first one. And from there, I'm gonna put one on the top of it. And you want your stems for your roses to be about as long as the base as well. So when you're cutting it, you can hold it up like that and kind of see where you want it to hit on the bottom of the base. And then you're gonna make your cut there. And then you can tuck it in, and to create some dimension, you can have some sticking out more than others because you definitely want to create a shape with this. And then it'll just create more dimension and just make it a little more visually interesting than everything being kind of flat. And even if you like things more of a tighter style, you just want to have that little bit of variance of height in things to make it really, really pretty. So then you're going to go to your next kind of gap that you have in your greenery and tuck your next grouping down towards the mini green hydrangea. And I always start with my lowest and then I build up from there. So for this one, I've started with my lowest that's touching my mini green. And then I'm going to go up from there with the ascot. And then like that. And then from there, I'll tuck in my third where I see a gap of my hot spot. So now I've got 2 groupings and they're looking gorgeous. Loving the colors already. So now we've got our final grouping. So pick the space where you really are lacking kind of greenery or just you have 2 mini green that seem like they're right next to each other. So I'm gonna go right here with my last grouping. And since I put 2 of my ascots kind of at the top here, I'm gonna alternate on this side and I'm gonna put the hot spot in as the tallest of this grouping. Just because you wanna kind of vary them. You wanna vary them without having them be kind of just randomly spaced throughout the arrangement. And then we'll do our last 2. And I don't know where that one is, so I'm going to move it. There's no harm in readjusting your arrangement while you go. There. Okay, so now we've got all 9 of our roses are in here. So the next thing we're gonna do is take our dahlias and we're gonna add those because they are our next largest flower. And some of these tend to have some really large stems. This one kind of does. But sometimes they're really large stems, so you want to put them in after the roses because they are a larger focal flower, and you also want room for that stem to go into your chicken wire. And the chicken wire is there to hold everything in place and really to create structure for your arrangement without having to use a ton of greenery or floral foam or something that's a little less environmentally friendly. So for the dahlias, we have an assortment of colors. We've got a pink tone and then we've got 2 purple toned dahlias or something similar to that. It might be 2 pink or 1 purple, all just varying. And these are all from a farm nearby from our friends at Lindsay. So I tucked this one right here and you want to kind of create that balance. So since I tucked one kind of in the middle on this side, I'm probably going to go low with one on this side and then I'm going to go high with one on this back side. So I'll go ahead and do that. And this one is my favorite of the ones that I have in my bucket. So I'm going to put it on the top just because I think that it's really that focal point for the arrangement. And for the dahlias as well, take off any low-lying leaves And if they have these smaller stems on the side, if they're about the right height, you can leave them. Otherwise, I would just take them off. And again, cut these at a nice angle. And since this one I'm putting in at the top, I cut it a little bit longer so it will sit right where I want it. So I've got that one right up here, this one here, and then we're gonna go in with our third one a little lower on this side. And sometimes if these are budding or they look really pretty, the little buds, you're welcome to use these in your arrangement as well. I like to not waste something that's beautiful, right? Like this will eventually bloom as well. So you can include those, but that's totally personal preference. You don't have to. I'm just gonna stick them in because I think they're interesting to look at. So final one, I'm cutting this one a little bit shorter because I am gonna put it a little bit lower in the arrangement. So place that one low. And that's it for our dahlias. And again, don't be afraid to adjust if something is out of place or you don't like the way it's looking. And I'm designing on this Lazy Susan because it just gives you the option to look at everything from every angle as many times as you would like. But that's just personal preference. So the next thing I'm gonna go in with is the red Scabiosa. The Scabiosa is a flower I've always loved. I've always loved it since I saw it in my older sister's bridal bouquet back in 2016, and I had no idea what it was in 2016. Now, I've been around flowers for a while, and I'm a huge fan of Scabiosa. So this is our next thickest stem for our flowers, so that's why we're gonna go in with it. Scabiosa don't have the low-lying leaves, you don't have to worry about that, but they do come with these little plastic straws on them sometimes, which is very, very helpful for not letting them droop. They tend to kind of crane their necks if there's not a structure to them. So this helps us to have control over them when we're designing with them. Sometimes it doesn't have this on them, and then you just kind of have to be a little more careful about where you tuck them into your arrangement to make sure they're standing upright. But this is something nice that's kind of a hack for us to make us look like pros, and you're able to really stick it in wherever you want and have control of it. So again, cut at an angle and scatter them throughout the arrangement. And with that little plastic straw piece on it, it really allows you to kind of give dimension to the arrangement and stick them out a little farther without them drooping at all. So that's something I really like. So since I've got one high up here, I'm gonna go kind of opposite on this side, and I'm gonna go in a little lower. And just keep that there. So we've got a really nice balance and kind of that asymmetry that I was going for. And then we've got one more, so you can really put that wherever you would like. And since this, I think, is my favorite, I'm gonna do one right below it to kind of really feature this area. And this one's really, really dark, which looks gorgeous near that. So that's how that's looking. And then we're gonna go with our bullet allium. And I love this because it looks like a little firework, a little firecracker. And the purple color is just something that can't be replicated. It's so pretty. It looks like a nail polish color to me. It's really, really nice. So this is something that also you can kind of stick out of your arrangement. If you want it more tucked in, you're welcome to do that as well. I'm gonna put this one a little low since I've cut this stem a little shorter. And I'm gonna tuck that right in there, down there. And then my other one, I'm gonna go high, and I think I'm gonna stick it out a bit, and I'm gonna do it about right there. So, cut the stem a little longer, and find a spot in the chicken wire, and make it kind of pop a little bit. So, this is really coming together. And then we've got our Gomphrenia, which is hot pink, and obviously it's going with the theme perfectly, but these are a perfect little accent flower. And these are just kind of a fun little pop of color where if you have a really dark area, so I've kind of concentrated some dark flowers right here, so I'm gonna poke one in there because it'll kind of give that contrast like that. And then if you have really little ones, They're kind of fun at the top, just sticking out for a little bit of fun. And just use all those and take off those low-lying leaves, because anything that's below the water line is not going to make your water happy. And it also makes your flower want to drink more to support the leaves that don't need to be on the stem in an arrangement. So this is my last one. And really just look at where you're kind of missing an accent. And I'm gonna stick this one right here. And I'm loving that. So now I have left a few of the stems of greenery for the end. And I'm gonna go ahead and add those in now if I see any gaps or where I'm missing something. If you see a lot of mini green at the top and you don't wanna see it, you can kind of hide it by tucking some greenery in at the end and kind of camouflaging it, which is really nice. And with this basil, we're very generous with it. So you should have a lot of pieces and should be able to, really get it all over your arrangement. And you don't have to use, obviously, all of the ingredients we've given you. It's totally personal preference. But these are really fun and do create, dimension and kind of asymmetry. This one I'm not loving, so I'm actually going to pull that out. And I'm going to use one more, and then I'm going to tuck in two little last pieces of my seeded eucalyptus that I saved, and then I'm going to be done. That, nothing. And the last couple pieces of seeded euc, which will pop right in and fill in any sort of gaps you might have or places where you feel like it's lacking something. So I have a couple little bare spaces near my mini green on this side, so I tucked a few pieces there, and then I have a big pocket of it there, so I'm going to put a couple little pieces right here just to kind of give it that balance, and then it should be good to go. And just make sure that when you're caring for your arrangement, you give it fresh water every day. The water line will drop quite a bit when these are just sitting and drinking, because that's what they do. But definitely be sure to top off your arrangement with fresh water each day, and make sure it's not sitting directly in the sun or in some room that's really, really warm, because it will cause the flowers to open up a lot faster, and we want your arrangement to last as long as possible so you can enjoy it for as long as possible. And make sure that you sign up for our Dahlia Workshop, which is coming up next week with Rachel, and it's one of our most popular. It's one of our favorite seasonal workshops that we do, and you can sign up for that on our workshop website. And I'm so happy that you guys had me here today, and I'm excited to do more workshops for Helen Olivia. So it's been really fun, and again, my name is Lindsay, and I hope to see you soon. Thank you so much.